my favorite are those who are trying to get better.
Right.
They tend to be more passionate about trying to learn psychological skills and so forth. And there's so many things that you can use. And it really needs to be customized. A lot of people hear about certain strategies. I know that in the interview did with Tim, they mentioned visualization. There's so much the research tells us about how to do visualization correctly, so you're benefiting from the most. And there's a host of strategies, from visualization and concentration techniques, anxiety management, relaxation techniques, pre-competition, routines. All of these things are research-based. It's not just like somebody had a great idea. And sometimes we like to hear, well, what did my idol over here, what did they do? I'm going to start doing that because my idol does that. Well, let's look at the research. The research really tells us so much about how and what to do it and when to do it. I was working with a minor league baseball team in Louisiana. And the first year, as psychologist supervisor of mine, we were out there. The coach was talking to him and said, "Men, these are the psychologists that we have around for you this season, and we hope you never use them." And we kind of caught eyes across the crowd. We were on the field with the team. And so we had to kind of come back from that. Second year, we're out there. "Men, these are the psychologists we work with. They were available last year, and a few of them used them, but we hope you never use them." And I just piped up and I said, "Actually, we want you to use us, because we're not here to always overhaul the engine or fix the ticking or clanking or squealing belts. We're here to figure out how much chrome you want to put on the Cadillac. You're already doing something well, or you wouldn't be at this level. We want to help you identify what you do well and then be able to do that on command, because you're going to be in situations where you need to know what you need to do psychologically to execute."
Whenever I was here, this was all metal fence. The heart of LHS was family.
The best tradition that I can think of with marching band was the marching competitions.
Oh yeah, I remember these green shirts. I was most involved with FFA. I also played basketball.
I did unbelievably win an award for a poem I wrote.
I'm Ryan Southard.
I'm Amber Foote.
I'm Kayla Burns.
I'm Kim Light. I'm the CEO of Heritage Bank of the Ozarks, and I am proud to be a Yellow Jacket neighbor.
At Independent Stave Company, our mission is for our employees and our community to flourish. That means supporting Lebanon's people, businesses, and schools today and always. We're proud to call Lebanon home, and we're here to support our hometown every play, every game, and every season. Missouri Cooperage, where community and teamwork always win. Go Yellow Jackets!
Welcome back to a special episode of Jacket Talk. Sitting down with Dr. Jeff Brown, right? Did I say that right?
That'll work.
Every aspect of it. Harvard. You got to be honest. I need you to tell me exactly what you do at Harvard. Then we'll go on from there, because Harvard's pretty big.
Yeah, it is kind of big. Right. It has kind of been big for a long time, huh? So my number one objective at Harvard is to stay out of trouble.
Okay.
Because it's a place of lots of opinions, as you probably have surmised with news and so forth. But I've been on faculty for over 25 years. And have been in several different roles: instructor, assistant professor. I think right now I'm a senior lecturer. So I've done several things, but mainly I work in training other psychologists who are up and coming and in the program at McLean Hospital. I teach seminars. I teach different things related to ethics and just, being a upstanding professional when it comes to being a psychologist. Well, that's my goal, at least.
Brian and I joke before you came in, I think you're the first time we've had a doctor in the studio, so it feels pretty good to know we've hit that level or checked that box.
Well, there you go.
So not trying to make light at all.
I'll try to put my best foot forward and have good manners.
Well, you mentioned a while earlier, and I really want to dive in today to mental health. And I touched on when you kind of came on our radar this fall, sponsored mental health night. And we know mental health is becoming much more of, I think safe to say 5 years ago is a buzzword, and now it's much more of a real thing. And I really want to touch on kind of what your experiences are in the athletic world of different age groups and the power of it. Maybe we talk just a bad story, if that's the right word, and then maybe an overcoming or something that you've been involved with or watched happen. I think we're very fortunate locally to have people who have not decided to push it under the rug, that have embraced it. And I think with things like what you did this fall have brought it to the forefront and made it something. So I'm excited to chat with you about that today.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's one of my goals, is to really get behind things that people are doing already in Lebanon, Laclede County, and so forth, and really try to buttress that and help mental health keep staying on the front burner.
Right.
You're asking, like, what are bad stories? I think in general, the thing that's most problematic is when people are ignoring it. The standard thing is, well, if your doctor told you something wrong with your kidney, you would see about your kidney. If somebody said you had cardiac issue, you'd see about that, or weight loss, you'd see about that, or not. And mental health's the same thing. It's one of the most natural things about being human, is that our brain regulates everything.
Right.
Everything. It doesn't matter if your heart's pounding, it's because of your brain. If you're sweating, it's because of your brain. If you have a knee-jerk reaction to something you see in social media, it's because of your brain. Every part of your brain has a special function, and it never shuts off. A lot of people say, oh, we only use 15% of our brains, I hear. No, it's 100%, and it's using all the time. You probably could learn more. Right. And do something different with your brain. We call that neuroplasticity, where your brain actually can change shape and sizes and do something different simply by having a different thought. Your brain changes. If you picture your favorite sport and you picture your favorite athlete in that sport, you already have two different images in your brain, and that's neuroplasticity, where your brain's actually changing and moving and functioning just like a computer would be. Our computers now are so fast. Unfortunately, we rely on that a little bit too much, way too much.
Right.
That's why I think, how many times have you Googled the same piece of information? There's theory and reason behind why you didn't hang on to that information, because you didn't hang on to it long enough to put it in long-term memory. Right. There's just so much about, that's what I like about people coming to my office. I work a lot with athletes, as you know, and I work with the Boston Marathon for over 20 years. Work with really deliberate, intentional, information-seeking, information-hoarding athletes, particularly runners. They want to do everything they can, to get their times better, to get that PR, to qualify, and so forth. But the idea that we just kind of disregard mental health, why do we do that? Well, it's because the stigma has so much to do with weakness. We think that mental health is synonymous with weakness, and it's not. Maybe maybe we need to call it your mental strengths or your mental capacities. Capacities sometimes has that negative connotation as well. People that are getting stuff done, people, and I mean successfully, they've figured it out that the mental health and the brain piece is just as important. One of the books that I wrote, called The Winner's Brain, is all about successful brains. There's nothing about pathology in it. It's not a self-help book to figure out how to get rid of your problem. It's a book that really talks about what the successful brain is doing, and had the opportunity to visit with some really cool people that everybody knows, people like B.B. King, worked with Andrew Wyeth, who's passed away, but very well-known American artist. All these people kind of shared some of their insider secrets. Laura Linney, if you loved Ozark, I always tell people back in New England, I said, watching Ozark, those are my people. I don't care how mean they are. They're my people. I know these people. And, but Laura Linney, we interviewed her about kind of her public self and then her private self, and how those two are different. I came into your studio today not misbehaving, but on my best public self.
Right.
You did the same thing, and quite impressive with just how we talk about things. But these are all brain things, and how dare we sort of disregard that? So we have to start looking at what our weaknesses are. Also, as I mentioned earlier, what are our strengths? I want to be able to really emphasize what my strengths are and have confidence and let my strengths give me confidence, regardless of what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if you're doing sport, and I like to use the term performance as well. It's not just athletics, it's music, it's dance, it's theater, it's all kinds of, teaching skills. I see people across the board in my practice that implement good mental health strategies or good mental strategies, psychological, I wouldn't say tricks. Sometimes that'll happen. I'll get a call from somebody and let's say, my son is running a state competition in 2 weeks and we wanted to get him in there so you could teach him a few tricks. Like, that's like going into the gym and saying that you want to be able to add 100 pounds to your bench in 2 weeks. There's no trick for that unless you bring everybody else with you to help lift. So those are some of the things that I can get fired up and I need to press pause and let you talk probably and respond to what I'm saying. But the stigma is only going to slow you down and get in your way when it comes to optimizing what your brain can do.
Right.
And I think that that's really, really the key piece. And sometimes that's the first hurdle, is for people to actually understand what they're talking about rather than just denying it. Can I add one more thing before I let you talk?
No, you're good.
Another big problem we have right now is we talk about misinformation in politics and so forth, but we have a lot of misinformation on things like TikTok, Instagram, where you have people diagnosing themselves, and now that diagnosis becomes an adjective. I work with people on that in my office when they do that, and you'll hear people say, I'm so OCD.
Right.
Or that's just my ADHD at work. It's like, well, it's not really OCD. And we kind of clarify that. Right. But people have diagnosed themselves everything from borderline personality to autism to Asperger's to, PTSD is another one. I just have PTSD from having talked to her. It's like, you don't have PTSD. Right. Somebody who actually has PTSD usually doesn't want to talk about any of the experience. They avoid it.
Right.
So again, misinformation through social media. So the educational piece of that is very critical.
Well, and actually when you started to bring up the social media platforms and stuff, I've always been one to think, and we see it a lot with parents and even the students and the stuff that we deal with, but like it gets a negative connotation, and there are really good tools within TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, YouTube. Like we see so many kids who, or educators maybe, who say like, he's just got his head in TikTok and he's only worrying, but like kids are digesting that information differently now. They're learning, they're figuring out maybe a way to cope with something. That's a whole topic for another day.
It is.
Back specifically to mental health. When do you think was the turning point? Like, when do you think we realized like, hey, let's start digging this a little deeper, because it feels like that gets lost in all the things we do, because we you get 5 years into something and you're like, okay, this is just normal. And it's something that I'm changing with or adapting with. But like, it feels like, I'm a 42-year-old dad that's, has a 19-year-old and a 6-year-old. So like, I've always kind of seen things from a different point of view, because, your life is getting all that. But when do you think we started to kind of, the light bulb hit that we were like, hey, let's take this seriously?
Yeah. I don't know that there's one specific point. I'm going to be anecdotal. I like to go to the research when there's research.
Right.
And if there's research about it, I'm not sure exactly what it would be. But I do think when we experience events that hit a community, we're more apt to identify with other people. So I'll give you some examples that some people will understand. 9/11. Mm-hmm. I did 5 interviews with media and television on 9/11. I remember that day very well. People that experienced that, I was in Boston. I was at the hospital and actually saw the second plane hit the tower. We all had that collective experience, and people have a tendency to want to talk about that experience. So I think something like that allows us to start realizing, oh, there is a mental health component here. Unfortunately, to impact a community, it's usually tragedy. So if there's a major loss in a community that people can feel, then that allows us to talk about the negative aspects, and allows us to be more vulnerable. I was about 75 yards from the first bombing at the Boston Marathon in 2013. That hit the community, the whole city. Right. It's shut down for a whole week until we found the remaining bad guy. But that's what people talked about. My colleagues at the Boston Marathon were quite bonded because we shared the experience. Right. Everybody had different experiences, but we had that together in real time. Therefore, it gave the green light that it's okay to talk about that. Right. 10% of people who go through a tragedy like that firsthand will potentially experience PTSD, bona fide diagnostic PTSD. Prior to that, I won't get into the diagnostic criteria too much, but we can have what's called an acute stress disorder. So you can have a bad something happen, and if the symptoms are still around 30 days later, not just a memory of it, but actually you're experiencing panic, you're not eating so well, you're having bad dreams or flashbacks, and that still is happening beyond 30 days, then we're looking at a PTSD diagnosis. But most people will kind of naturally want to talk that stuff through. So I experienced it. So I was a member of that community that had the experience, but I was also, as a psychologist, kind of pulled to the front burner on, okay, now what do all these people do that had the experience that I had? So I think that it's through experiences that bring us together as a community. I often say in Boston, there are two things that bring the community together. That's a blizzard and the Red Sox. We can all talk about what it's like to be out there shoveling, and you chat with your neighbor when ordinarily you wouldn't chat with your neighbor because you actually have time spent together, almost elbow to elbow as you're shoveling. And then the Red Sox, heartache, people will talk about that as well.
But they struggled a little bit. They had some heartache.
Yeah, they did. It's part of the culture. It's part of the fabric. It's resilience.
It's the texture.
It's because Grandpa struggled with them. I'm going to struggle with them, and so there's the family value there too. But I also think that things like COVID, it wasn't tragedy in an event that was a single event like 9/11 or a bombing or something else that's a tragic loss for a community. But it was something that people had similar experiences with and allowed us to talk. So COVID might be our most recent community experience that was the most literally global, but for us as a culture, that might have let us talk more about some of the things that are related to mental health issues because we all kind of felt it. And kind of looking back on it, it's sort of like, wow, we actually kind of pulled back and didn't do much for that long of a period of that period of time. It's kind of amazing to think that we endured that.
Right. And, I think when we're seeing that or we're talking about it, and we've gotten to talk with some athletes that were in high school and it was different for COVID. They might've missed out on maybe a year and they still struggle a little bit with that. And we've got some other interviews lined up, and we've done some with some kids that have went through specific injuries. And we got to talk a lot about what happened, like right then, what they remember. But then the tone moves to that they missed something, and I think that kind of alludes back to what you're talking about, where now there's groups that have experienced it together. There's kids that have went on and overcame things. There's some that are still, going back to that. They may be, I can think of a kid here locally that, he's going to miss his prime high school years because of an injury. And I know that they're going to work a lot on that mental health side of it. I made the joke earlier, but like if you would have, in 2000, when we're playing football and we've got our coaches running around, if you would have brought up anything that resembled what we now talk about as mental health or mental weakness, like it was perceived as weakness. Like that was the floor. And the ceiling was like, if you didn't have weakness, you were applauded and you were tough and you were doing it. And I do want to talk more too about the research, because we were just having a conversation yesterday morning, and it'll make sense when I get through it here. But when I was in high school, creatine was a bad thing. If parents were like, kids don't take it, you'll do all these things, then drug tests came out and you shouldn't have creatine and it's banned and all this. And now through research, we've digested it. We've watched it. We've researched, we've grown. And now talking about creatine, there's brain benefits to creatine. There's all these new things that if we would just give it time, instead of just either being hot or cold to something, we're moving in a world that it's like, okay, let's maybe start taking that supplement. Let's move in that. And mental health is the same sort of thing. What do you think is changing in the age ranges? Because I think in this world of performance and athletes and chasing scholarships and doing all the things, like the pressures are clearly starting younger, but they change a little bit. How are you kind of seeing that world?
Yeah, several points to that.
Yeah, I can ramble.
But I think first of all, I go back to some of the buzzwords that we've had for parenting over the years. Helicopter parents. Okay. So they were the ones that were up above, watching down, monitoring everything.
I might live with one of those.
You might live with one? Yeah. You want her grounded? Yeah. And then we switched to the bulldozer parent.
Okay, I've not heard that one.
Yeah, so the bulldozer parent is the parent that goes out in front of their kid and takes every obstacle out of their way so they can be successful. And so they're bulldozing the path. And so the kid's following behind and the parent's knocking down everything so their kid can be successful.
Right.
That got more dangerous than helicopter parenting, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah? Because what's absent is the capacity or experience of learning from failure. If you don't learn from failure, you have this false sense of self-security that you can do anything. I'm invincible. And I think that's not a great thing. Right. We need to learn through experience. We know from research, particularly younger kids, learn from just engaging with an activity. They don't even have to be good at it. They just need to involve themselves in, give them things to take apart and put back together when they're younger, things that they can just learn through experience. But if you don't build resilience, and they learn resilience by watching you as a parent deal with something and then bouncing back and educating them about how you bounce back. Mm-hmm. It's going to always be the athlete that bounces back that comes out on top. It's going to be that way. That's why it's important to practice failing. It's one of my favorite examples I shared recently, that if you are practicing the comeback from failure, then you're going to be able to do that when you need to. And that might be right in the game than where it matters most. Right. If you do fumble, what do? Who goes where? If the ball goes between your legs in baseball, who covers that? Who goes where? If you've never seen the runner running when the error happens, you have no idea where that runner is going to go. So let's practice that and practice executing coming back from that, because that's the next time it's going to matter, is that piece. But if you don't ever practice that or have the experience of it, what makes you think that you'd be really good at that moment?
It feels like, I'm a big believer in everything is cyclical. Kind of what you're talking about, maybe in 1987, it was your dad or uncle or coach even is like, did you learn your lesson? And they termed it learn your lesson, and then it got a negative connotation. But what you're saying is essentially that, but in a much more digestible, understanding and thought out version of, well, you know, we talk about parents saying, hey, that stove's hot, don't touch it. And then the kid touches it. And then the parent's like, you learned your lesson. We're not getting that drastic. Like, we don't want you to hurt yourself to get better. But the same, it still resonates. It's the same story or same application, just in a way that's maybe more understandable and better thought out and backed by research, really.
Yeah. And I think it's important in those situations to think about where a kid is developmentally and what they're supposed to be doing as they're growing older. I'll give you an example, what they're doing, and then how it is you ask them or teach them about something. Let's use the hot stove example. So if you tell a kid who's 3 or 4 or 5, don't touch the hot stove, developmentally, what are they supposed to be doing at this point? They should be obeying their parents, but they're also, as a little human being, developing independence and autonomy. When kids are, terrible 2s, trying 3s, what are they doing? They say no to everything. Why? Is because they're actually establishing who they are as an independent person. They're trying to have autonomy. They want to be in their own space. They want to have their own voice. So when you're told not to do something, I've seen a lot of grown men, right? Told not to do something. What are we going to do? We're going to try it out. Yeah. Don't tell me what to do. Yeah. That's how it's going to be.
Don't give me those instructions. I'm going to figure it out on my own.
I will figure that out on my own. So a good thing to ask your kiddo at that point is, that stove is hot, isn't it, Johnny? That stove's hot. What do you think it's going to feel like if you touch it? And let him engage in that process.
Right.
And they're just going, well, it's going to be hot. Well, you want to try it? Well, I don't need to try it because I can feel it's hot from here. And then they've learned from that. You gave them the opportunity to still be independent in the decision-making and not just tell them to do something. It used to be sufficient. Why should I do that? Because I told you so.
Right.
I still believe that in situations where you need to get your kid to listen to you. If they're running out into traffic, you don't have time to explain to them why they need to obey you. And when you say stop, they need to stop.
Right.
I think sometimes we swung way too far in the other direction, that we just let kids create an absolute mess with no structure because we want them to learn. It's like, I'm not sure that I buy that
figure
either.
It out on their own.
Yeah. But it's almost like at the expense of disrupting the entire room when you let that happen. That's a different discussion. We've got lots of discussions to have in the future, Ramsey. But I think that letting your kid kind of learn to predict outcomes is really key. And then you guide them on how to predict rather than just telling what the outcome is going to be. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I think, like I said, I think you can wrap up what you're saying and experiences I've had into you have to leverage who or what you've been through or the people that you trust. I think you mentioned, if there's, hey, I want to touch the stove. Dad says that's hot. Like, you're also learning trust from dad or your coach or your peer. I mean, peers are doing it too. That's the other thing is, like, it's kind of weird to see, and maybe using my own experiences, like, if I'm on the football team and Billy's the star player, I probably didn't put any knowledge or emphasis that Billy might know what he's talking about, and he's just that first level, back to that floor ceiling sort of thing. Like, it wasn't cool to, like, lean on people. We talked about peer pressure, and peer pressure was a negative connotation, but there could be times, and I think we're seeing it more through people are getting smarter earlier, people are developing earlier. Peer pressure, while pressure is probably not the word, might actually be a good thing now, because you have peers that have, if you're talking about sports, maybe Billy has been playing football longer and had a different level of coaching or a different experience. And so there are opportunities to use that and leverage Billy's skills or the coach's skills or dad's skills or mom's skills, and being open to that. And I think that's part of mental health. So it's just changing, and it's different, I think. And
that's how resilience is taught, is through a kid having somebody that's a mature symbol, representative, parent, older sibling that demonstrates how to do that. They'll imitate that behavior, and they need to see that, and you support them in them trying that on their own.
What's happening in that space in regards to just all of the noise? It does seem like it can be pretty noisy because, you know, you used it, misinformation, or, you know, there's gurus that maybe can sell you something that they're good at and not necessarily they really are, but they've read a book that's told them how to sell you that product or that term. Like, how do you kind of cut through that? How do you, if I'm a teenager and, you know, I want to play basketball and there's all these basketball gurus and coaches, and then you've got your LeBron James and you've got your basketball coach at your school level. Like, what's the barometer there to kind of diagnose or move into a world where you're finding those opportunities that really will help you as opposed to just be noisy? Yes.
So you're in the business of asking really big questions, aren't you?
I think so. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't get
No. I'm glad you're asking it, because it's one that's really not asked much, because I think we've accepted the fact that it's a cluttered mess of alternatives that people have to choose from. And a lot of it does boil down to people wanting to make money off of your circumstance and your situation. And oftentimes it's not research driven. One of my very important, or not important, but significant passions is protecting the public. I'm on the psychology state board in Massachusetts. I've been doing that for a few years now. And our number one goal is to protect the public. But we have frequently lots of people who we hear about that are promoting, you know, I'm going to put in air quotes, mental health or psychological stuff that is not research-based. It's not, people aren't trained. They're not maintaining their competence. How do we sort through that? It has to do with, I always say that if a mental health person that's a professional, they need to be at least licensed. Start there when you're picking something out. When I wrote a journal article with a colleague of mine several years ago, she's out at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and we wrote about the different aspects that are necessary to work with athletes, and confidentiality made that list that was published. And if you don't have that, if you can't talk to somebody without fear of what you said being told,
right,
then you're not gonna make progress. It probably goes back to some of that mentality that we were talking about before, about it being a weakness, or sharing something or talking about mental health that meant you were weak. That's not the case. It's just not the case. But you do need to have that confidentiality. Right. Now, legally, and again, advocacy, legislation, those things are very important, and how I like to support mental health these days. But legally, there are things that we have to talk about to keep people safe. We have to tell certain things, but going into that, what those things are. A professional will tell you that, and they'll cover that from the get-go. That's another thing to look for. License, and then somebody tells you, what's the plan? Here's how we do this, and here's the limits of confidentiality. I should not have had my iced coffee because I'm just rattling stuff. You're firing things at me, and I'm trying to.
It's all right. Normally in Jacket Talk, we get to sit down with some coaches and stuff, but we typically let Kevin have the adult conversations. And so I'm having conversations with the kids, and we talk varying different things. But you talked earlier about there are no tricks. I do want to get a couple examples of maybe how to approach some situations that might come up. So while you were talking a second ago, I started thinking negative aspect of basketball right now is, you could argue, is Steph Curry. I'm not arguing that Steph Curry is negative, but Steph Curry changed the game. So you have a side that says Steph Curry ruined basketball, and you have a side that says Steph Curry made it amazing, and I want to go do that. So you got a kid. You got a kid that's 11 or 12, and he scrolls social media and he sees cool videos of Steph Curry, and he's like, okay, I'm going to be Steph Curry. That's awesome. But how would you coach that individual or address that situation to show that they can do Steph Curry things, but let's focus on the other things that you don't see Steph Curry doing, the mental side, the reps, that sort of thing. So without it being tricks, like how do you kind of approach that, you know, when they've set up this model that they like, but they know that maybe they're not old enough or don't understand that model took time. Let's get there. What would you how would you address that situation or approach that, if that makes sense? Does that make sense?
It's a good question. You have to do it. Actually do a kind of a comprehensive assessment of. We talked already about development. Mm-hmm. Is this a kid that has capacity? A lot of people want to do something, but they don't actually have the physical skill to do something. So they need to go back and do that and figure out. I had a guy one time that was, I worked with a lot of runners because of the marathon. He came to me, he was doing everything we talked about, but he couldn't get it done. And it's like, everything we're trying you should see some improvement.
Right.
And I said, let me talk to your running coach. And I should have talked to his running coach earlier, because the running coach said, yeah, this guy, he's not capable of doing what he thinks he's supposed to be doing right now. And so we scaled that back. I let him know that I talked to his coach. He'd given me written permission to do that. That's the confidentiality piece. And we incorporated that into it, because he thought that he was reporting to me that he was capable of doing those things, but somewhere in there was denial or resistance and so forth, and he wasn't able to do that. So developmentally, is this a kid who's 9 years old watching Steph Curry? Is this a 15-year-old that's never played? Is a 15-year-old who's played forever and hasn't done well? Is a 15-year-old that's your top athlete? All of those perspectives are going to be different. Right. You said the key, and that is you're seeing a player doing very well right now at the top of a game. What do you think they were doing when they were 14? What do you think they were doing when they were 9? Some people are just going to be gifted.
Right.
Michael Phelps, swimmer. Man, so many things about him genetically, they're just set up to do really, really well. Mm-hmm. And that's just how that is, and great. He also has a lot of psychological skills, I'm assuming, behind all of his physical capabilities and his physical positioning to be able to be a great swimmer. I think that's the key, is really looking at, again, the struggles and failures of someone, because if we idealize them, they're going to be perfect. And then if we want to be like them, we're always going to be disappointed, because we'll fall short of being perfect.
We make perfect we make it the important when it's not really the important. That's where you get to. It feels like, and maybe this is a downfall of social media, but like that instant gratification. You know, they think, okay, I went to a basketball camp. And please, if you're watching this, I'm not harping on basketball or Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry's great. I wish he wouldn't chew on his mouthpiece all the time. But like, other than that, Steph Curry's amazing. He's doing things that no 6'1" guard should be doing. And that's a whole other conversation of, you know, Steph Curry at 6'1" is still bigger than 90% of the kids that you'll play basketball with in high school, and he's the smallest guy on the court. So there's a whole other battle there. But with that being said, like, back to what you were talking about, that you're going to fail. You're going to have moments of mental weakness. Things aren't always going to be, and they don't have to be laid out in a clear path. Clear paths are great. Michael Phelps probably had a relatively clear path. That's not saying he didn't earn it. He didn't, get those reps in and all that, but like that was his way of maybe bypassing some of that. In that realm though, like how would you mentally approach someone who says, I like to look at the facts. So I don't know exactly, I'll probably butcher this, but like 5% of athletes in high school actually get paid or get scholarships for higher education. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then of that 5%, only 2% of those get the next step. So if you have those goals, how would you how do you make that relatable to a kid who doesn't think outside the box like that? Maybe if that makes sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding your question. It's like, how do you position yourself to reach a goal like that.
Right.
And I think you have to realize first what your own personal goals are.
Mm-hmm.
You can't run in your lane, but compare your performance to the person next to you.
Right.
You can strive for whatever their goals are, but you need to have them as your own goal and meet the next goal that leads you to the bigger goal. We call those performance goals. You have an outcome goal. So if you hear, you're standing around and a couple kids had a game, they run up to you, yeah, the game's over. First thing we say is, how'd you do? Who won? Okay, that's an outcome goal. Mm-hmm. The performance goal, I always go to baseball because I played baseball for Lebanon and in college at Southwest Baptist, was a pitcher. And so the question should be in baseball, how'd you hit? Did you run fast? Because those are the individual performance goals for an individual athlete. Right. Now, baseball, football, basketball, team sports. So we tend to say, oh, how'd you do? How'd the team do? How'd they do Friday night? Who are we playing? Did we beat them? Did we beat Camdenton? We want to know that right away. That's the outcome. But each one of those athletes on the field for both sides actually performed up to par on some of their goals. They met them, they missed them, but those are all individual, the collection of everyone's performance goals that come together to create the outcome. Right. This is something you have to grab a hold of because you'll always fall short. Just like I said, you see this perfection or what we perceive as perfection, Jordan, Babe Ruth, pick an icon. And if we hold that as our standard, then we will always fall short. That's discouraging and so forth. But if you do your next goal, Carter Singh, who was on your show, is going to be doing the next something. He's not going to go for the very top. I'm going to guess. He can let me know if I'm wrong. I'm glad to be wrong because, you learn from being wrong and failing, right?
Learned your lesson.
I learned my lesson. I learned them a lot. In fact, a lot of lessons, of lessons, Ramsey. But if you have that, if you meet that next goal, that's where we make progress. When you're lifting, I'll get outside of his performance and just say in general, when you're lifting, you don't put on a 45-pound plate. You put on a 5 or 10 and you add to that and you get there and then you build up.
There you get to 35.
And that's the performance goal. Okay. And that's the performance goal.
Right.
Your outcome goal is I got my best and that's it. Okay, well now what? That's not how it works. And it's just wrought with lots and lots of failure.
You're seeing, I think another example of that would be Mizzou just played Arkansas. And at the end of the game, they interviewed Coach Drinkwitz and he won the trophies. That was one of the goals. Obviously, they have a goal of making the playoff, winning the SEC, winning a national championship, but they know that none of those are attainable without winning the trophy games. So they won the trophy games. That's the outcome in that world would be making the playoff, winning the SEC, blah, blah, blah. But the other goal, and I forget what word you used right there because I was thinking of what I'm talking about.
Goal?
Performance goal was win the trophies. Get there, start there, climb the mountain, understand that, we do have these big goals, these outcome goals, but getting those performance goals is good too. We can't, and I think that's where it's all or none. Going back to that same thing is you start playing football and someone says, hey, you're a good athlete. Well, then you're like, I'm going to play D1. Well, maybe it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe you're too small. Maybe you took a year off. Whatever the reason, not make no shame in however it got there, but you're a D2 athlete. That's really good. And we don't equate, I don't think, in that realm. And I don't think teenagers and young people have the ability to pull that in and go, okay, I didn't go D1, but holy crap. A lot of kids would love to be in my position. And I think the mental health side of all of this that we're talking about is bringing that to the forefront and really prioritizing accomplishments, prioritizing that you can do cool things and it doesn't have to be what you originally thought. Is that kind of a fair?
Yeah. And I think go back to what you said about performance goals, that if you meet your performance goals, it's very likely that the outcome goal will happen. I'll give you an example. I can give you as many examples you want because I just love making things up to problem solve around that. But I'll go back to the very first book that I wrote. the contract was for a book for 45,000 words. If I sat down and my outcome goal is a 45,000 word book, and I sit down and I start to write that, I'm not going to get that done on my first attempt unless I just sit there. But the quality of writing is going to diminish the more I write. And now I'm up for how many hours trying to get this done. So I back scheduled that, and I thought, I'm going to write 500 words a day. And that becomes a performance goal, something that I need to do every day. And if I do that every day, my outcome is going to happen. Why? Because I did my performance goals that led to the outcome that I wanted. So in fact, I'll come up with more than 45,000 words for that first book by writing 500 a day, because I had 9 months to do it. So it allows me, and then you have the benefit because you met your performance goals. You get 55,000 words or 65,000 words. And then what do you get to do? Oh, now you get to go cherry pick the very best part of a book and edit that out. And then give it to your editor who tells you, you picked the wrong ones. This is what we're getting rid of. You're keeping this back. So those sorts of things. But that's where you also fail and learn and become a better writer, because somebody else tells you, oh, this is what you need to be thinking about. This is a good story. Why'd you save it for the last paragraph? We're going to open up with that. And that's where you learn. And that's where we get better and better and better at things.
You wrote 500 words on this topic, but I need 5,000 words on this topic, and I need 500 on the one you wrote 10,000 words about. But it does go back, and it's a perfect example of putting it all together, or understanding that there's levels. There's levels to a lot of things. There's levels to your performance on the court. There's levels to performance in the classroom. And it's always, this isn't permanent. And I think kids get a little lost in that. I think when you look at social media and and I hate the term, I wish there was a different term for it, but we look at influencers, and we talked a little bit earlier about this, but like scrolling social media, you see a performance or you see an outcome of somebody who has spent years making the dumbest videos to ultimately making the best videos. And there's been people along for the ride, but maybe you didn't catch them at middle school video making level. You caught them at varsity video making level. And if you're that middle schooler going, man, that's the goal, I want that. But you also have to look at that from a lens of just because they're good at that doesn't mean they're good at what they're doing. Because they could be really good at making videos, but don't know crap about the topic of their videos. But they know the algorithm. They understand what someone else did. But it's all a climb. To not use the cliches of Miley Cyrus and it's the climb song, but like it really is. And dissecting and bringing it down into those things. I talk about like Coach Payne in high school. He was no negative seconds. And in high school, we were told, if you make a bad play, don't relish the bad play. Don't just move on. And I think now I realize a little bit more of what that meant, but I also understand the power of what it could have meant to be explained to that a little differently, because at 17 years old, you miss a layup, like you're just mad that you missed a layup. But there's so much that happens after that. One missed layup likely doesn't result in a win or a loss, but multiple bad layups with multiple bad negative seconds compounds into the things. And I think that's really, it's a different world, and we're seeing it in the business side of what we're doing and understanding better how we can just continually just get better, do more reps, think about the mental. Is there scientific data? I know that like muscle memory is a thing. Is it equate in the mental reps, mental memory? Is there any kind of research or anything that kind of talks about the power of that?
Well, yeah, because you're working on habits. So many things that we do in our thinking are just habit-based. You have to identify them and then change them and try to alter them. We have so many errors that we make in thinking. Like, for example, a good one is mind reading, that we know what other people are thinking about us. when we're talking. I think I know what you're thinking about me, but I don't really. You're thinking about, lunch that you didn't get today, or how this guy's rambling on and is not staying focused.
You're thinking that about me. I'm the one sitting down with a Harvard guy and talking like I'm 12.
Yeah, no. But we think that we know what other people think about us, and we actually believe this nonsense, but we don't know what other people are thinking. We work really hard to make a good first impression. We put our best foot forward. So because that's important to me, what you think about me. So I'm going to try to make sure that you're thinking about me what I want you to. That gets so confusing. Right. But that's a good example of a habit that we have in thinking. It's like we don't need to get caught up, because a lot of people, what do they often think? We'll let you be psychologist for a minute. What are most people thinking that you're thinking about them?
If you're fat, overweight,
it's all the negative stuff. It's your own junk. It's your own junk that you think they're thinking about you. Right. Well, get that cleared up. Right. Stop that. Stop doing that, because we call it projection. To some degree, it's projection, that I think that you're thinking that you don't like my sweater, or that, what I wore today doesn't look right, or what I'm saying sounds sketchy. I'm not thinking those things, but I could be projecting that onto you if I believe those things. I like my sweater. That's why I wore it. And if you don't like it, too bad. That's healthy thinking,
You're
right?
not the one wearing it.
Exactly. Okay. My sweater would not fit you. And it's,
not a lot fits me anymore.
Yeah, well, you can work on that one. I'll work on that with you. It's like, we've got all kinds of fashion senses around here, I'm sure. But you get my point.
No, I do.
It's what we are thinking other people are thinking. And it's just a bad habit. So there's one, you're talking about muscle memory. You're using a powerful word for psychology. That's memory. Is it muscle memory? Is it just your brain doing its thing, even with muscles? We often are, we have bad habits. I help people change bad habits, like chewing fingernails. That's such an easy one to fix, but we have to work at it, and it's doable. And it's fun to see people come in and, they almost get a little bit sassy. They'll walk in the office and say, well, since last week, look at this, and just something simple like that.
Meanwhile, they picked up another bad habit.
Maybe.
To offset
and then
that.
we talk about, well, what's the habit? What's the function behind the habit? Are you stressed? Are you nervous? What are you doing? So anyway, it's often all connected, and we're always trying to put out little fires like that.
If someone's watching this, and maybe it's a parent, and they see their child struggling a little bit, maybe they get too down after they want to score 10 points a game, but they're scoring 4. Okay, let's use that as an example. How would you help someone start on a path to better understanding what we've talked about, performance goals versus outcomes, and then be able to kind of wrap that up into changing it? Because for me personally, if I'm going to be the psychologist here and my kid wants to score 10 points a game, but is only scoring 4, I'm going to try to find the positive, but I'm also not going to coddle. Like, that's a struggle parents have right now, because you hear participation trophies, you hear all these things, but maybe you do have that kid that doesn't feel accomplished unless they hit that 10 points a game goal, but they're consistently doing 4, and which is great. That is helping an outcome. That's doing all sorts of things. But how would you kind of start the process or
so
help
the first
heal?
2 things might sting some people. But if you want your kid to talk to you and tell you the truth about things, the first thing you have to do is make sure that they observe you telling the truth and everything else you tell to everybody else. If you're exaggerating things, if you're not telling the truth, if they see you tell white lies, they're not going to tell you the truth either, because they know that's not a value that's important to you.
Okay.
That's huge.
I can see your face. This is, I think now we're getting into something that's...
it will make a kid feel very isolated if parents aren't being honest and truthful about everything else with everybody else. I'm not saying air your dirty laundry publicly. I'm saying, but when you are talking to other people, be honest and truthful, because your kids are going to learn to tell the truth or tell lies by watching what you do. And this goes way when they're young too. Right. Count on it. Secondly, first of all, don't talk immediately about sports, you need to be having conversation with your kid about everything. Sports is just one of the topics, and their performance is just one of the topics. If you're not talking to your kid about other things, about what it was like to go to grandma's house and what they want for Christmas and the stress of homework and who their favorite teacher is and their least favorite teacher and how to deal with that, just hearing them out, just talking. We know that there's so much research that encourages sitting down at a family table and eating dinner. It doesn't matter if you're a single parent or not, if you're a married parent or not, sit down with your kids, go shopping with your kids. We also know kids will eat more healthy foods if they're helping pick them out at the grocery store. Just some wonderful research like that. There's tip after tip after tip that's research based, going back to the kind of the charlatans, the people who are out there just to get you to part with your money and follow them on whatever. Go with the research.
Right.
Did I say go with the research? It's there and it's helpful. We have people doing so much to inform how we behave and what we do. And then I like the translational piece of that we take research and then apply it to individual situations. So one, make sure that your kids are watching you tell the truth. They'll know what your values are when you're expecting them to talk to you about the truth, how they're feeling. Secondly, make sure that you're talking about a variety of things, not just performance. Unfortunately, we have some parents that their egos rest in their kids' performance, and it's really stressful. I hear about it within the confines of confidentiality. Kids will tell me, if I don't do well, mom or dad, they have a fit. I had a family years ago that the parents had 3 kids. And with 3 kids, they had 5 hockey schedules going at the same time, 5 different teams for 3 different kids. And mom and dad were each coaching. One was coaching 2 teams, one was coaching 1 team, and getting all the kids to hockey. They were up, ice time is not easy to get. So they were up for a 5 a.m. practice, but also there at 10 o'clock at night to get on the ice. So that's just nuts. Why are you doing that? Well, it came down to like family ego. Well, dad was a hockey player, and that's when mom met him. Is when there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and it's playing out, and kids are paying the price, because we know, again, research about how much sleep kids really need to physically develop their human brains. We know that brains are developing when kids are sleeping. Information, new knowledge, that memory is consolidating when we're sleeping for all of us. There's so much that goes on just with good sleep. So again, I said, it's all related. We want to look at the big picture. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you did, because I think, you touched on it too. Like I think there was something I saw, a buzzword I'm hearing, or a buzz phrase I'm hearing a lot right now is like, be where your feet are. But I think it goes to that aspect of when you're talking to your kids, when you're there, like, don't talk at them, talk with them or to them, listen. I think those are some of the things, and obviously we're not sitting here, and I didn't ask you those questions in hope that we cure some relationship with mom and dad and their son or daughter. But I think slowly more parents are starting to maybe back off of the whole, like, Johnny must be good at this. Like, they're becoming more inclusive to their kids' thoughts, and I think you're seeing it, but maybe they don't really, much like kids, teenagers don't understand what they're consuming. I think parents are starting to better understand what they're consuming or how they're consuming it. And we're getting a better idea. I know for me personally, like my wife owns a bookstore. And so like watching my 6-year-old ingest books, and I think back to, I joke a lot of times, like, the only book I ever read was Where the Red Fern Grows. And I'm sure there were other books that I read, but like watching my 6-year-old soak in these books and be so excited to learn and to digest that information. Like, now I'm figuring out a different way from my 6-year-old that's currently 6 to how my 19-year-old was and when she was 6, and it's completely different in the grand scheme of parenting, and it's so fluid. And I feel like maybe back to what we were talking about, lesson learned and all of that. Like, we were brought up in a world of like absolutes. Maybe I'm making a little more sense now. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think now parents, coaches, athletes, singers, songwriters, people that have a craft and they're learning, it's so much more relative now to their surroundings and how they're taking it in. Again, you take a kid who scrolls TikTok all day and he's learning through TikTok. But if you would have told me when I was in high school that I could go on my phone and be educated by some person whoever, wherever they are, but I was in a mode of, Mr. Maskey or David Demuth was my math teacher. Like that's who I learned math from. But now
I know those names,
right? Now those kids have so many different opportunities to find the Mr. Maskeys or the Mr. Demuths or whoever they look up to. And that's not to say that Mr. Maskey's not good. Mr. Maskey maybe has a different performance goal for you. And Jake Paul, who might teach you a thing or two about whatever, because you have a desire and you want to be better at this, but this person's better, back to what we were talking about. So it's just always different because it feels like all the noise that we talked about before, and maybe I'm getting out on a tangent here, but like at home, that noise should be maybe classical music, and outside of the home, it's heavy metal, and they need a spot and a person to just be mellow and tune everything out and figure it out. And I think parents they're learning that. I know I am. I'm understanding it better, but it does go back to mental health. It goes back to understanding a little bit more about our surroundings, that sort of thing. I don't know. I'm probably way out there.
I think one of the best things that parents can say, and I'm sure that my parents said it to me at some point, and I don't have a specific example, but I can tell you kind of the formula for that. And it's okay for your kids to come to you and you not know the answer to something. Mm-hmm. They need to hear you say, I'm not sure, but we're going to figure it out. We'll find out who knows, and we'll find it out. That's the best thing that you can do. Say, we'll figure it out. We'll find out who knows the answer, and we'll see if we can come up with an answer for that, because that's reassuring to your kid, because your kid knows you don't know everything. Right. They've watched you not know everything and never said a word about it. But I think that's really a key piece, and it allows your kid to be able to come to you regardless of the situation.
Well, that works in business too. I mean, we're finding is like, I know there's times where we'll get a phone call, can you do this? Or is this offered? Or what do you think of this? But like, you just like most people, coach, mentor, like they don't know everything. Might think they do. You might give them the trust that they do, but like there's also other opinions. There's other side of the coin. There's different things, and being honest, transparent, saying, hey, even example, mom or dad, Billy comes home and struggled at practice, and maybe mom or dad isn't the answer for the mental side of that, but Billy hearing mom go, hey, that's out of my realm and dad's gone or whatever, dad's not here or whatever in the case, let's talk to grandpa. Grandpa played sports and he can give you that information. Or do you have a coach? And I think wrapping all of this back up is we're in a very fortunate community that we've gotten the opportunity to see the coaches. I give Timmy too much credit sometimes, but he deserves it, because it is in the world that we're at, we get to see the formal version of kids, meaning the kids that put on the black and gold, that do the things. But I know Timmy gets to see the hybrid version of the kid, because it's a spot for them to go and have fun and build a community of other kids that are doing it. And it's always cool to see how at Timmy's gym, for example, like it's after school, it's 3:30, and you could have a football player, a wrestler, a basketball player, and an archery and a homeschool kid. And they don't travel in the same circles, but they're there for a common goal. Mm-hmm. They're all learning off each other. Then you get to the Carter aspect, and they've got that next goal to look up to, and then they've got the goal of Timmy, but they still haven't understood the whole mountain, and we're seeing it, and it's becoming more open and more relative. I guess I go back to that term a lot, but I'm probably just rambling at this point because I enjoy these conversations because I think it's very important that as much as we ask the youth to be open and to head on a swivel, like parents, mentors, leaders, we all have to be soaking in that and understand how to pivot or understand maybe where we fall short and the people that we can leverage and help ultimately get that goal. So it all makes sense in my head. I hope it makes sense in the people that are watching this. Yeah, you're nodding a lot. You're nodding a lot. So I feel like, I'm projecting now that you think I'm really smart.
I think you're brilliant, Ramsey.
Yes.
You heard it here.
I heard it here. But let's end on just if you could. And again, I don't want to insult you by saying go back to tricks, but like, is there something mentally, maybe an athlete or a parent, something that they could do every day, or maybe a practice of a parent and a son or daughter that maybe an activity they should kind of try or experience to kind of get a better idea of some of the things that you've talked about?
Yeah. I think rather than being kind of like prescriptive and tell everybody to go do this, I would say one thing that I've known that has worked for a lot of people has been to be mindful of what your goals are every week and what needs to happen to meet those goals for every week. Keep it simple. It can be complicated when we set out to do something. I see it happen so much. People who go to the gym on January 2nd, they're going to lose weight. They're going to get in shape. And they're there for 2 hours on the 2nd and 2 hours on the 3rd. And by the 4th, they're still in bed because it's just too much too fast. Mm-hmm. I even will have people in that situation. I tell them to get up, go to the gym, go into the locker room, wash your hands, leave and go home. Because you've met your goal of getting to the gym today, and let that soak in. Goals need to be moderately difficult. Now, that's always felt like that's so vague, but that's what the research. If it's too easy, we're not going to try it. We're not going to just like, I can do that. If it's too hard, 2 hours a day starting on the 2nd, and I'm going to nonstop, I'm going to lose 80 pounds. That's too much, too fast. We need to have things that we need to reduce it. If it's moderate, we think it's moderate. I'm going to get to the gym, I'm going to change clothes, and I'm going to get on the treadmill for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to come home. Okay, that may be more moderate than just washing your hands. Regardless, to answer your question and not be tangential, I can do that too. We chase rabbits in here.
Right.
It's athletics, chasing rabbits. You got to be fast.
Right.
But the idea is to look at what your goals are every week and figure out how you're going to accomplish them. They're your goals, your personal goals that might dovetail or precede a longer term goal down the road. That's one thing that I've known to be very useful for people, and research backs it up.
Right. So baby steps. I mean,
and baby steps with structure.
Right.
Baby steps oftentimes are like all over the living room floor, right?
Right.
But intentional baby steps are going into the kitchen to open the refrigerator to get out that T-bone that you're going to cook.
Right.
It's far more defined, far more objective. And that's really what makes a good goal a good goal. It's objective and measurable. When you're doing it, everybody around will say, yep, that's exactly what he or she did because it's objective and measurable. That's key to good goal setting.
So you're saying, like, for me, an example would be, don't get a king size, just get a regular one. Get in that world. Don't supersize the meal, just get a medium. It's totally fine. You're going to get the same. You're going to get the same outcome if you get a medium instead of a large.
As full.
Yeah. No, it's. I think I really do. I think wrapping all this up, the mental side, and I like what you talked about. I don't like the negative connotation of mental weakness or how some of that has kind of been painted, but I do. The good outweighs the bad because we are bringing it to the front. We're stopping to think. And I think as parents as leaders, as mentors of kids, it's really important that we put ourselves in their shoes, understand that they're looking through a different set of lenses than we did and or are, because it's ours are changing. You know, I think a lot of times, like, you know, you wonder as a parent or as a business leader, like if you're doing it right, but like what's to say is right? Because we're all kind of, especially parenting, like I wasn't a parent until I was a parent. So I don't have experience. Now I have a little bit more because I have a 19-year-old versus a 6-year-old, but our parents were first-time parents too. So
I often tell kids that when they are concerned about, you know, their mom and dad won't let me do this. And it'll be like a freshman in high school. They won't let me do that. So keep in mind, they've never had a freshman before. They're new at this.
And it's crazy to think, but it's the truth. And it's really diving into that sort of understanding and for me, boiling it down to be able to put that wide angle lens on and soak it in. And I think, again, I can't thank the people that we have in this community, because even with what we're doing at Jacket Nation Sports, it's new, it's different. It does take some foresight to really be able to understand and not maybe pigeonhole it or put it down a lane that they're comfortable with. But ultimately the goals are the same and the opportunities are out there. There's opportunities for us. There's opportunities for students and for athletes and for the school districts and all the things we come in contact with. But I'm excited that it's much more present now, because I think it only helps the growth of what everyone's trying to do. Anything else? I don't know. Maybe I should.
No, we've covered a lot.
What kind of music do you like? Now I'm going to get real comfortable. What's your music?
What was my favorite? Gosh, I like all kinds of stuff, to be honest. I don't get stuck with one something. I'll listen to 70s, 80s, 90s country. Like it kind of depends on what I'm doing and where I am. If it's the gym versus driving versus.
Let me ask it in a different way. Yeah. You're getting ready to get in the car and you got to go for a road trip. You got to drive to the airport or whatever. What is the one song that comes on that you're just like, oh yeah, this is it? Like, there's got to be that one.
Well, there used to be one that this is the answer to that, and it fits kind of what we're talking about. So we talk about things that are important to us: faith, family, and friends. Okay. One song that I would always listen to that when I was moving, and so I'd have to load up a U-Haul, and I was going from Bolivar. I'll tell you where I went: from Bolivar for undergrad to Warrensburg for my master's degree, from Warrensburg to Pineville, Louisiana for a pre-doc, from Louisiana to Boston. Every time I would load up the U-Haul, I would listen to the song Stephen Curtis Chapman, "The Great Adventure."
Okay.
Because it talks about you've got a trail to blaze and through God's wild blue yonder, God's amazing grace. And I think that is definitely the song. And that song has come up at different points in my life that are key. Out of the clear blue, I didn't throw in the cassette.
I was getting ready to say,
and then the DVD.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's one song that has had lots of meaning in my life across the way. It's like, here we go. It's the great adventure. I don't know where I'm headed. Kind of know where I'm headed, but you know what the experience is going to be because you're going to learn. And I think that's really key.
Gotcha. Okay. So
how about that for an answer?
No, that's a good answer.
You want self-disclosure? You got it.
Mine was probably, Regulators by Warren G. That's just a song that, I mean, I don't get too into it as far as that goes, but I get it because, there are those songs that talk about memories and, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's different maybe. And again, most of the songs, much like what we talked about earlier, like the songs that shaped you, you probably weren't listening to them in 1987 or 1992, the same way you're listening to them in 2025 and in the same mindset. And it's, we could go on a talk about that with parents and music and kids and all the things. I mean,
I do remember hearing blaring in the blockhouse during two-a-days back in the day. Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that. You probably heard the same song when you were in the blockhouse back then.
Yeah, a lot of, I remember back in the day, the blockhouse of AKT. Was that any of your age?
Afraid not.
That was,
I'm old.
AKT was a phrase they used that they couldn't put the whole phrase on the t-shirt. So they had to put just AKT.
Cheaper that way.
Now, well, and now you could probably put it. No one would care because we don't get as tied up in the words. But I do remember my mom was, bless her heart, she was an amazing mom and still is an amazing mom, but she would send me to weights. And I remember being like the only 4th or 5th grader at weights with the varsity guys. And they shaped the way I look at the world a little bit. But no, it's different with music. Books.
Big John Grisham fan.
Okay.
I like nonfiction in general.
Okay.
I like to write, so I like to see how books are constructed.
Okay.
Typically, people now buy books not to read it from cover to cover, but for important chapters that stick out to them as far as nonfiction.
Yeah.
Fiction's fun. I'd like to maybe write fiction one day. I have ideas, but
What would you write a book about? You don't have to give me your whole idea.
Yeah. I like psychological thrillers related to crime, FBI type stuff. So I'm a sucker definitely for a movie like that.
I restarted Homeland over Thanksgiving break, and I'm hooked again.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was 8 seasons. I guess I forgot, but that show is there for me.
It's wintertime.
Yeah, I need something to watch. All right, now you're Boston guy, live there pretty much full time or full time.
Yeah, back and forth to Lebanon and Missouri now, at least halftime, if not more. Yeah.
Seafood, Boston.
Oh. Belle Isle has the best lobster roll ever.
Okay, what's so good
it's just
about
a restaurant. You leave there knowing that you almost didn't finish it because you're so full of lobster, and that's rare. Okay. Usually lobster rolls are like measured out, so many pounds, a quarter pound of meat. It's just piled on. And they've got somebody that shucks lobsters all day long, and the water's right there, and the airplanes land right over. If you're sitting outside, the planes, you can't hear the person across from you on the picnic table because the plane just
Gotcha. What was the name of that place?
Belle Isle Seafood. Very local. There's no subway stop close by.
Right.
You got to know how to get there.
Not to put it on my list if I ever make it
cash,
out there.
That kind of joint. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not really the whole cash thing. I'm pro, like, give me a card, and no, I don't want any pennies in my pocket.
We've got an ATM at the front door.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What do you got going on?
Well, let's see. That's a great question.
Holidays, fun stuff.
Holidays are here. I'll be back in Boston for a couple of weeks, and then back in Lebanon for a couple of weeks. So I'm here all of this week in Lebanon. Glad to be here with you guys, and glad we pulled it off.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming in. We were like a freeway of things there. We kind of went down, but it really is important, and there is an opportunity for folks to listen to this and understand better that whether you're relating to your kid, your son or daughter, husband, wife, like it's important to really focus and understand and be open to these mental health discussions and understand that maybe you don't have all the answers. There are people that have a lot of the answers. Maybe not one person has them all, but be versatile or be, what's the word I'm looking for? What's they say in like in your stock market portfolio, be diversified in where you consume information from and take some
cautious
time
about those sources.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we had some good conversations. People probably think we just rambled, and that's totally fine. But hopefully they'll find some good out of this.
Nuggets.
And again, thank you for what you did this fall. I don't know that I ever would have I never would have thought that would have been on the bingo card for Lebanon football. That's just complete honesty. And I think it shows that there are other opportunities and other ways to look at the things we're doing. So kudos to you for being, the flag waver of that and putting it forefront, because I think it's important.
Well, thank you. Kudos to the people that got involved, the Lebanon High School, counseling department, folks that the Booster Club.
Right.
There's so many people there that also believe the value of doing something like that. So I'm glad to be behind that and support that and get people connected to resources and know that that's available to them.
Right. Well, we sure appreciate you and we appreciate the opportunity. So hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. Again, we couldn't do it without our sponsors, Heritage Bank of the Ozarks, Missouri Cooperage here in Lebanon, and Mercy Hospital. Those folks continue to believe in the things that we're wanting to bring to the table, and we couldn't do it without those folks. So it's pretty awesome to have these opportunities. So thanks again.
You bet. My pleasure.
Dr. Jeff Brown, Lebanon grad, need your clothes dry cleaned. Still,
there you go.
Still has a hand in that. So quality cleaners at the end of commercial, but appreciate your time. Again, thank you. And these endings are always awkward. Oh,
that's all right.
And you have to say go Jackets before you get off here. So
I can say that. Thanks, Ramsey, and go Jackets.